What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today, we're going to talk about analytics, tracking, and pixels. And we were going to be showcasing a campaign that James created. Unfortunately, he had a minor circumstance come up with the family, so he's not able to join us today. But we are working to reschedule our time so that you guys get a chance to see that. When I spoke to James, the way that he set up his campaign relied on what I'm going to show you how to do today. So even though he's not available, it's his good stuff that you're going to need to know. Plus, I'm going to show you a lot of other things that are super useful. That if you don't have insights into exactly how your visitors, your website visitors, are behaving and what they're doing, what they're clicking on, where they're coming from, this will help you do that. And I'm going to show you some insider tips and tricks that I've learned over the many years that I've been doing this. Okay. As always, please add your questions to the in the chat in Facebook, and I will answer them accordingly. We will get into some slightly technical stuff. I'm going to keep it pretty high level though, so I'm not going to get super detailed into the more advanced capabilities of these different systems. But I will essentially show you what tools you can use. They're all free tools, why they're important and how to use them. And then also going to show you how to install them. Okay. So without further ado, let me just modify a couple things here on my screen. I didn't have an enormous amount of time to prepare this, so I'm going to be kind of doing it on the fly, if you guys don't mind. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So you guys should be able to see my screen now. And here's what we're going to do. We are going to cover these tools. We're going to cover Google Tag Manager. So Google Tag Manager is a great free tool from Google. Essentially, if you install a bunch of different tracking scripts on your website, what will happen is that when your website is loading, it will essentially pull all of these third-party tracking codes, and sometimes it may slow down your website because it won't have it has to wait for a response from that third party in order to load that tracking. And so Google Tag Manager essentially is a single line of code or a single tracking tool that you install on your website. And then you can install all the tracking codes into Google Tag Manager. And what Google does, essentially, Tag Manager will pull and only load that one script, and it'll do it asynchronously, which means that it doesn't have to wait for it to load the rest of the website. So it significantly improves performance and speed, which is important for both users and for search engines. Okay. Google Analytics, if you don't already have this installed, it's fantastic. It's free. Google already knows everything, so not much point in keeping things from them. May as well use their services. Google Search Console is a relatively critical component if you want to rank for organic and inorganic search results. If you have any desire to ever rank well in search engines, you have to have Search Console installed. It gives you a ton of control over the way that your website is crawled and viewed by Google, and it also gives you a lot of data that's not available anywhere else. Like, for instance, I think back in early 2010s, there was a big shift into like privacy for an HTTPS and SSL, and there's like a bunch of security and privacy that Google started implementing, so that anyone that was essentially visiting your site or doing searches, like you in Google Analytics, before you were able to see what keywords people were clicking on to get to your website. Unfortunately, fortunately for users, unfortunately for us as website owners, that also removed the ability for us to that time when they implemented all this security and privacy. It removed our ability to see what keywords people were actually clicking on and searching for, and what we're showing up for. So Google Search Console de-anonymizes this data and actually gives you access to the keywords that you're ranking for, what position, and gives you a lot of really great tools. So I highly recommend that one. Facebook Pixel. The Facebook Pixel is Facebook's analytics and tracking system. If you are ever hoping to run successful Facebook campaigns at a larger scale than what I covered in the last video, then you need to have the Pixel installed, because it allows you to do a lot more interesting stuff. And it feeds Google's algorithm and allows you to run campaigns like the one James is going to show you. Super important, right? And then Hotjar. Hotjar is another free tool that I use, and it gives you access to how people are actually specifically using your site. And I'll show you that tool as well. It's one of my favorites. It's free, but then even if you upgrade, it's still one of the cheapest user experience research tools out there. Okay. All right. And hi, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us. So I'm gonna talk about what it is. I'm gonna do a quick demo. I'm gonna talk about how to install it. Okay. Google Tag Manager. Let's talk about that. Actually, I can just click on this. Yeah. Okay. So this allows you to essentially manage the tags on your site. Okay, so I'm just going to sign in here. If you have a Google account, you click on just start for free, and you'll create a new account for you. And they'll give you a lot of different options. Essentially, you want to create an account here. You put your company information in here. You put your website, and you put what this is for. You're mostly going to be on web, right? Because we're talking about websites. We're talking about apps. And what it'll give you is something that's called like a workspace. So here's our workspace for Tenerife.fun. And when, in order to install it, you'll get a code like this. Okay. Now for WordPress, I think that you even have like plugins that will do this for you, but you essentially have to paste this code into the head of your page and into the body of your page. So you guys are using a lot of different types of tools. You guys may be using WordPress or Wix or Squarespace, or there's a lot of different types of website builders out there. You guys may be using different kinds. The way that I kind of like I'm going to try to like generically solve all your problems in this. And that is that, like, obviously if you have questions, you can post them in the group and I'll be happy to answer. Somebody else can jump in. But Google is your friend. And anytime that you need to like figure something out, like for instance, like, how to install Google Tag Manager on WordPress. Okay. This will give you a really, like, this is how I learn everything. And I've learned a lot. But you essentially just do that, and then it'll give you like of some videos, getting started, setting up Google Tag Manager. So this actually has like all the instructions that you would even need, et cetera, right? Oh, wow, it's got a bunch of stuff, right? So the way that you do that is you essentially, you install this on your website, okay? You may even, let me see if there's a plugin for it. Google Tag Manager plugin. There you go. Right. So it's like a free thing. It's a free plugin. You go into your WordPress in the back end, and it's super easy. You just plug this in, and then this tool, this plugin will then lead you through the instructions right, on how to do that, on how to install Tag Manager. Okay, so you install Tag Manager on your website. Jonathan asks, should I hire someone to take care of all of these things? You certainly could. It's this. I'm not getting into like super technical things. Like it should not. If you have a website and you know how to update its content, you should be able to do everything I'm about to show you. You certainly could hire someone that's a little more technical to do this. But if you follow the instructions in this video, you should be able to do it within an hour or two of your time, which is pretty much the amount of time that it would take you to hire somebody to do it for you. Okay. So what you're going to get is this workspace. So that's Google Tag Manager. Okay. Google Tag Manager is an important piece in tracking. You are able to set up different types of tags. So you have different types of tags that you can install. And then something called triggers, which essentially means like, where do you want it to show up? By default, you can just have it show up everywhere. You don't have to do like complicated triggers. You don't need to set up a bunch of different things. You essentially just set up a tag. So like if I wanted to add a new tag, I would just click on my home, on my default workspace. I have a button that says add a new tag, and then you pick which tag it is if it is already in here. Right, there's like so you see that supports a bunch of stuff. It supports Hotjar out of the box, so it'll tell you how to do that. I'll show you how to do it later. But you can put any kinds of things on here. Plus, you can do custom HTML. So you can just plug in custom HTML, and you can put any tag in there. Okay. And then as far as triggers go, you just say all pages, which is the default, and then you publish it, and that's it. Like instead of having to go into your WordPress, copy and paste code into your WordPress header and all that kind of stuff, Google Tag Manager you set up one time, and then you can manage all your tags from Google Tag Manager. Okay, so so that's how you use Tag Manager, and I'll actually show you an actual example as we're going through these different tools. All right, so our next one is Google Analytics. So Google Analytics, this is kind of Google Analytics Academy. It gives you like a bunch of information on how to use Google Analytics. But let's say I actually want to go into my analytics account. So Google Analytics gives you a lot of really useful data. It will essentially show you how many users are coming to the site, right? I don't have e-commerce tracking set up on here right now, so the revenue is 0. So you have active users right now. You have what pages they're visiting. You have essentially where in the world your visitors are coming from. So you can see like United Kingdom for us in the last week is 77%, 78% of our traffic. You can see what time of day. Now, the stuff that I find is like most useful is when you're actually looking at things like, which pages, are being viewed the most. You're seeing, if they're coming back, that sort of thing. So the way that you do this is you go into admin. So when you create a new account, this will be like essentially like will lead you through this. But essentially, when you're creating a new account, you'll get this page. You put your account name in here, data sharing, which is fine. You click on next. So I just put test account. And then you say, I'll measure my website. Yep, because I don't have an app, right? And then I put my website name, and then I put test.com. And then you say like what time zone it's in. You create. You got to accept these terms. And this is what it's going to give you. It's going to give you a tracking ID, and it's going to give you the site tag. So here's the cool thing, right? Is that instead of putting this code, once you have Tag Manager installed, which could be just through a plugin, you essentially just go and you say add a new tag, and then I want Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, right? Because it says global site tag, website tracking. So this is a Universal Analytics tag. You click on here. You're going to track page views, right? You don't have to do that. haven't done this in a while. I'm going to do it all pages. Oh, okay, there it is. I was wondering, I was like, where's it going? So Google Analytics settings here. So it was a select settings variable. You go to new variable, and then you'll get this page, and then it just says tracking ID, right? So you take your tracking ID here, you copy it, you paste it into there, right? Don't change anything else, and click on save, right? So here's this Google Analytics settings, I put it on all the pages, right? So all I need to do is add a tag, and then I add a trigger on when I want that tag to fire. There's only two things I need. Click on save. And essentially now that tag has been added, but it's not been published to the site yet. When I'm ready to publish it, like after I've added all these tags, I click on submit, and I say like, added test tag, right? And then here's the changes that I'm publishing. I'm publishing Google Analytics settings, and I'm publishing this tag. So those are two things I just added, right? I click on publish. And now that tag is showing up. So like this property that I just set up, this new account on Google Analytics, I put it in my tag manager, and it's immediately seeing traffic. So right now, I don't know if it's going to show me it right now, but let's just say I want to go home. Maybe it'll fire, maybe it won't. Yeah. I think it's because it's so new that I don't have anybody on the site right now. But that's how you do it, right? So Google Analytics is really great. Let me show you a couple of things that Google Analytics can do. What we're going to do is, so this is all real-time stuff. So let me show you, this is pretty cool. Geography. So if you're ever curious on like where your customers are coming from, maybe this is one of the problems. So by country, I can see in the last week, right? And if I wanted to change the dates, I can change the dates here on like the range that I'm looking at, or even I can compare it. So like, how do we do this week compared to last week? And you'll see that like our users from the UK increased by 21%, right? Our bounce rate increased. Spain, Belgium, Ireland. So one of the cool things about Google Analytics is that, okay, here's one of the things you need to remember. If you are using Fair Harbor or Bookin, or essentially any of the booking or Bookio or whatever it's called, if you're using any reservation management technology, like to do like your checkout widgets, you need to add that Google Analytics code or that tag ID also in there. So like let me do Fair Harbor, add Google Analytics. All right, so they have several. Look, this is very useful, right? So you essentially have Fair Harbor provides integration with Google Analytics, Facebook Conversion Pixel, AdRoll, Optimizely. Now, because Fair Harbor has its own software and that essentially is integrated into your website, the Google Analytics tag that I just showed you, if you put that only on your website, and then when people are checking out through something like Fair Harbor, Google Analytics can't see that because Google Analytics is only on your website. It's not on Fair Harbor's properties, right? So Fair Harbor gives you the ability to essentially add your own analytics tags. Most booking software does this, by the way, to add those tags into your booking checkout flow so that you can continue to track through your website and then through the checkout flow, right? Through their widgets. So the way that you would do this is there's a bunch of like how-to articles, right? So you go to this page right here, and it's like, here's how you do Google Analytics, right? Like, so you put this on every page, and so here's you do add your Google Analytics tracking ID to FareHarbor. So you essentially contact support and you give Google Analytics that tracking ID that I showed you, right? And then they'll put that code on the site for you. And make sure that you enable e-commerce. Just follow these instructions. And if you follow these instructions and you enable e-commerce tracking in Google Analytics, it will track for you your checkouts and your purchases and your conversion funnel and a bunch of other stuff for you, right? So you'll actually be able to see, like, unlike I don't have it installed on our site right now, you'll actually be able to see which countries people are booking from, what revenue they're producing, and that sort of thing, right? Now, I also find this super valuable and useful if I'm looking at, for instance, on mobile devices. Like, I want to know how many people checked out on mobile versus desktop. You know, how's our traffic changing? So you can see that mobile accounts, 589 visits this month. Desktop was 287. So a lot of people on mobile. I mean, this is pretty common in travel. A lot of people on mobile. I'm not going to go any further into this. Google Analytics has a lot of information. There's entire books written on ways to use this. I just wanted to give you the basic of how to install it. It's important that if you don't have it already, install it, because if you don't, you need to collect data. So if there's ever a question, like let's just say 2 months, 3 months, 6 months from now, you have a question regarding where users are coming from and what they're doing and how traffic is growing and that sort of thing, you need to have data to access. And so always install this on every website and every property immediately, and then that way you'll have access to it later. All right. Google Search Console. So I mentioned that Search Console gives you a lot of information that you wouldn't have otherwise have access to, right? And so here's a perfect example of that. So performance, it gives you performance. It shows you clicks, impressions, click-through rate, average position. It shows you essentially what kind of keywords. So like these queries, this is super useful stuff, right? So like if I add average position, it'll show me what position I'm in for a number of different keywords, right? Actually over 1,000 in the last 3 months. This gives me a really good insight into what people are searching for and what I'm already ranking for, right? So you can see that, like, finally, like around mid-June, we started seeing traffic increase again, right? Because like this is like dead period. I mean, if we look at the last like 16 months, we were growing really fast, and then like COVID just annihilated it. So like this was like we're growing, and then we saw like a major uptick because we made a bunch of changes and added a lot more content, and like we like had this huge uptick, and then COVID happened in March, and you can see like this right here, this like just we just got this destroyed, but like you can see it's starting to come back up again, right? And again, this is really, really useful for this kind of data and analytics, and there's a lot of SEO strategy that goes with this, so I'm not going to go into that as well in this, but it's also one of the things that's really vital that you have on your website. And a couple of things that are really important on here is that you can actually, let me see on the settings, you can actually change. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can find this. So there is a testing resources, Search Console. So there used to be a place, I actually don't know where it is right now. I'm sorry, I just didn't have time to prepare this. URL parameters, messages, crawl stats. I'm sorry. And what I'm looking for is that you can actually specify which country you're in, and that will give you access. Yeah, so usually, they updated this, by the way, recently, and they keep moving stuff around, so I just don't know where it is right now. But usually in settings, you were able to change which country you're targeting. So like if you, like 80% of your customers are coming from the US, you should tell Google, hey, by the way, my customers come from the United States, target the US. I don't think I have the. Yeah, I don't know where it is right now. But if you're curious about how to do that and you want to actually install Search Console, let me know and I'll run you through it. But essentially, what you're going to do is you click on Add Property. After you create your account, you put the domain in here. Maybe I'll just do this again. And it'll essentially ask you to verify your ownership, right? And you can verify it in a number of different ways. You can put this code in your DNS settings, which is kind of a pain in the butt, but there are instructions on how to do that, right? So like, here's how you would do that. There's also, let's do this one. No, I can't do that one. Oh, wow. I wonder if that's the only way they have now. So that's the way you have to do it. You put that into, you go to your registrar and you put that DNS, that code in your DNS settings, and that's how it verifies their domain ownership. Okay. That's Search Console. Facebook Pixel. I know this is a lot, guys. Thanks for bearing with me. Facebook Pixel is essentially now what you would use for Facebook analytics, but then also for Facebook advertising. You can run ads like the campaign that I showed you last time without the Facebook Pixel. But incorporating the Facebook Pixel gives you access to way more powerful advertising tools and campaigns. Okay. So we're going to go to Ads Manager. Oh, that's an old campaign. All right. So you go to, so in the last video, I kind of walked you through this as well, but like you need to create a campaign, or sorry, a Facebook business account, and then create an ads account. And then once you created those, you can go to audiences, or not audiences. You need to go to Events Manager. So this is your Events Manager. You go to create. No, not there. How do I create? Connect data source. All right, right here. Connect data sources. Man, how do I create a new one? Sorry, guys. All of these tools keep moving stuff around. And I'm trying to find all this stuff. How do I add a new pixel? Anyway, when you go here, you'll see some button somewhere. This is add a new pixel, or when you create your account. Facebook has like a bunch of ways that it pushes you into the Facebook pixel creation. But you essentially, you take this Facebook ads pixel and it'll give you something like, man. I'm telling you, man. I don't know why. Yeah, so it'll give you something like this. It'll give you a pixel ID. Okay. Now, for the purposes of this video, the only thing you need is to take this pixel ID and you go to Tag Manager. You go to your workspace. You go to add a new tag. In the tag configuration, you click on Where's Facebook? Man, why do they keep moving stuff around on me? Do they pull it out of here? All right, well, they used to have it in here. That's super annoying. These like wars between these big tech companies, man, they never end. They swear to God, like instead of making it convenient, they're like, oh, we're not going to let you do Facebook on your site. But essentially, in this case, what you probably want to do is just search for how to install Facebook Pixel on whatever platform you're using, WordPress or Wix or whatever. And then Facebook will give you a piece of code that you put, JavaScript, piece of JavaScript code, and you put it on your website. And then you also should reach out to your like search for how to install your Facebook ID Pixel on your booking management software, right? So, like for instance, FareHarbor has here a Facebook conversion pixel. Maybe there are instructions. All right, so just contact FareHarbor. It looks like FareHarbor, you have to contact them and then they can install this code for you. But you can pretty much just tell them your Facebook Pixel ID and your Analytics ID, right? And it'll just install those things on your site. They'll install it for you on your site. And the cool thing is that you can then start tracking things like purchases, right? And checkouts. So like when somebody starts a checkout, it'll like register it as an event. When somebody purchases something or buys something on your site or makes a booking, it'll also send that information to Facebook. And then what James does is he actually creates lookalike audiences based off of people who bought. So like, he's got, I don't know how many hundreds of purchases. This is a very common marketing advertising technique. You essentially then create a campaign that says, advertise to everyone who looks like people who have bought from us in the past. And Facebook, of course, using their enormous library of data, pulls all of this data together and says, here are the people that we think we're going to advertise to based off of your own conversion data. And then it just does optimization for you, right? It's a really great and easy way to do it, but you can't do it unless you have the Facebook Pixel installed correctly. And the way you have it installed correctly is that you have to have it on your website and you have to have it on your booking management software. Okay, so that they can track both visitors and people who are buying things, right? People who are checking out. So that is Facebook Pixel. Again, I'm like super high level on all of this. I know this probably opens up a lot of questions for you guys. Please feel free to ask them, and I will be happy to like walk you through all this stuff. And then there's Hotjar. Hotjar is amazing. It gives you things like heat maps, so you can understand where people are clicking. If they're clicking on stuff that clearly they shouldn't be clicking on, because you're like, wait, that's not clickable. Or what are they doing? And it gives you recordings. So I'll show you how we use it at Tenerife. So like I'll show you an example as a heat map. So like this is our product page heat map. What else I want to show you guys? Yeah, let's just show you. Let me show you this one. So this essentially shows me a product page, and I want to understand people that are on desktop. What are they clicking on? And so this essentially shows me that people are clicking where I want them to click. I used to have websites, by the way, where people would click on stuff and it's not clickable, and yet people were still trying to click on it. So like it's important for me to understand how people are using the website, right? So like I installed a Hotjar code, and then it just does all this stuff for me. It shows me that, yeah, people are clicking on adding more people and passengers. They click on the book now button. So like I'm like, okay, so like I can clearly see that this is that people are clicking where they need to be clicking, right? Now, it also gives me movement, so I can see how people move their mouse on the website. So I can see calendar. People are definitely engaged in the images. They're engaged in the bullet points. they're engaged in the headlines and the book now, right? So that's an important thing. And how they scroll. So if you have like really important content super low down on your website, but you'll see that like, I don't know, let's see, you know, only 4% of people actually reach the bottom of this page, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of like where people stop. All right. And then it does the same thing for mobile as well. Mobile is very useful as well. It shows you where people are tapping. Right. Now, for me, one of the most important parts of using Hotjar are the recordings. So what do I mean by that? I mean by that is that we actually record people who are using our website. And I want to understand what they're clicking around on. So like, here's a perfect example of somebody who's on the site for 24 minutes, half hour ago. So if I click on play, it'll actually show me exactly what they did on the website. And if there was anything that broke, right? So like this person was clicking around here, and I have this like sped up a little bit and it skips pauses, but super useful. I've already found a bunch of things that that we've improved, you know, over time. But I watch these like once a week or once every 2 weeks, and put together a list of things that we need to fix, and then we fix that stuff, right? So if I didn't have Hotjar installed, I would have never been able to know that you know, our checkout is broken, or somebody clicked on something and it took them to a broken page, or you know, the experience of the website is just very important. So so you can see this, like they use the footer links. They're like reading about all the different stuff that we have in Siam Park, right? And so I'm like watching as they're using this. Super valuable, right? I mean, that one less valuable than others, but then you know, there's checkout attempts, so I can see like when people are checking out, and you can see that it tracks everything. It shows me where people are coming from and which country they're located, and allows me to drill down even more right into the site. So anyway, Hotjar is great. If you sign up for an account and you get your tracking code, right, like this, and gives you a site ID. Also a free tool, by the way. Same thing. I go to my tag manager. I click on add new tag. Thankfully, in this case, it actually has Hotjar already installed or already pre-approved. Unlike Facebook, which is like, why would you not have Facebook? So you put your Hotjar tracking code. You just put the site ID, and it does the rest for you, right? So again, a bunch of free tools. Great tools for understanding how your site visitors are using your website. It is very important, if you have any chance whatsoever of succeeding in online bookings and you don't want to depend on OTAs to do the selling for you, you have to have these tools. There's a lot of different tools out there, but you have to have these tools installed now, even if you don't need them now. By the time you need them, it'll be too late, you know? So you want to get this stuff installed. It doesn't take that long to install. You do a little bit of Googling on how to install this stuff. It's really not that bad. It's all free. And when you do need it, it'll be a lot easier for you to go back and actually get the information that you need. But if you don't have this stuff installed, you're essentially flying blind, right? Like, you can't possibly hope to try to get a decent number of online bookings and continue to grow your website if you don't have data. Because when you're face to face and you're selling someone, right, you read body cues and language, or on the phone you can understand what people are asking, and you can respond accordingly. But on a website, it's essentially just like an automated salesperson that lives somewhere on the internet. And if that person is broken, and you'll never know it unless you have data. So data is the language of online marketing. Okay, it gives you information that you don't otherwise have access to. So you can't just like hope to like put up a website and all of a sudden be like, oh great, it works, right? That's not how it works. At least I've never built anything that I'm like, here's a website, and all of a sudden I'm like, have all the bookings or all the sales. Like it doesn't work that way. Like everything that you put out has to be constantly improved. Like I'll tell you, like right now we are on the 4th version of our website. We've rebuilt it over and over and over again because every time we were like, oh crap, like it didn't do this well and we need to rebuild it. And our brand has evolved over time, right? So it's super important that unless you know what to change, like the worst thing you could possibly do is be like, oh, we want a new website, and to rebuild a website and to add things to the site without knowing why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. Man, have I been talking this entire time? Thank you, Joan. I love it. I'm sorry, guys. Wow, I was just talking on mute. That's fantastic. Yeah, Alice, the sound that just went. Jonathan, do you rebuild? Jonathan says, do you rebuild from scratch every time? I well, the 4 times that I mentioned, yes, we rebuilt completely from scratch every time. But within each one of those times, we would be working and optimizing the website on a regular basis, constantly. Like we would do data. We would look at the data. We would understand, oh, people want this kind of information, and so we would add that kind of information. And so we rebuilt the site because we moved from selling just boat trips to selling other tours to becoming a regional OTA. So that's why we rebuilt every time. You don't have to rebuild the site from scratch every time. That's expensive. Obviously, we've invested a lot in building our website. So the thing that you kind of need to remember, though, is that you can't improve without information and data. And you have to have the data on there, these tags, right? And have these tools at least activated. You may not have to, you don't need to be an expert in how to use every one of them. You just need to have the data so that you know what to do when you need it. Okay, so it's the only source of data that you can consider the truth. Okay, so this is like one of the things I have. I was saying that before when my sound was cut off is that it's one of my biggest qualms. One of the things that I really despise about OTAs is that they don't give you any data. Like they don't tell you about who's searching for what destinations, for what they're searching for. Like, when we were developing new products, I really want to understand. I said, like, well, like what products are already available what are people looking for in different destinations from different places. Like if I knew that UK travelers, for instance, like because UK makes up 40% of our customer base. If I knew what UK travelers were searching for to do in Tenerife, then I could essentially embed parts of those things into our product. But unfortunately, OTAs don't share any of that information. And I flat out asked the president. I was on this webinar with the president of TripAdvisor, and I asked, why do you guys not share data? And he just flat out just didn't even respond to me, right? So I don't think that OTAs are trustworthy in that sense. Unlike Google, that gives you all the data that you need in order to become better and to learn and to essentially adapt. OTAs are just like black boxes, right? And so you can put your products on there, but you'll never know how many people are looking at your products. You'll never know what your conversion rate is. You'll never know like what products other people are looking for in comparison to yours, because they just don't give you any information. And so it's super kind of important that like if you own your own data, if you own this data, I mean, you don't technically own it, like these third parties own it, but you have access to it, and you can actually improve that way, right? Like I'll give you a perfect example. Like we have a search bar on our website. I mean, I'll show you this because I think it's a really useful thing that Google Analytics does. It actually gives you search. So let me share. Sorry. Okay. So in Google Analytics, let me just turn off no compare last week. And then you'll see that on our website, we have this search bar, right? When are you coming? July 16th to the 23rd. I'm 3 people and I'm looking for, boat. And so when you put that search in and you get these like search results, right? I want to know what people are looking for to do in Tenerife so that I can continue to add products that we may not have. Right? So like if they're searching for, I don't know, skydiving, I don't have anything for skydiving. So I want to know what people are searching for. So perfect example of a really useful feature of data that you can't otherwise get in anywhere else is what people are searching for on my own website. And so I can actually see what does site search, and I can see. Let's see if it's search terms. So like in the last week, we've had 13 searches, activities, anything, boat, family, fun, jet skis, jungle, Laura Park, private yacht tour, Siam. So I can see what people are searching for. And if I don't have products, I can add them. I mean, look at this for the last 30 days. Now I can see what are people searching for. Let's see, because like finally some traffic is coming back to searches, to homepage. You can see boat is actually 7 searches, Siam Park is 5, family, right? And there's like 30 queries here that I now have access to, and I can actually see what people are searching for. So this is one example. Like there's if I didn't have these tools available, I would never be able to see that there's actually like people are actually searching for private tours, private, Barranco, water park. So these are all different places you can go in Tenerife. And so I check this regularly, and if there's something that doesn't exist or a product that doesn't exist, I can add it. Again, not possible with any other tools, without these tools. So very important to have these tools installed. Thank you guys. I apologize. The sound cut out. Joan, yes, the video is being recorded and will be posted in the group. Any more questions before we bounce? I know that there's a lot to cover in this video, but I think I was really trying to kind of like give you guys a really brief overview of these different tools. They're all free. I didn't share any paid tools with you guys. They're all free. And I know we all have a little bit of downtime right now, so like it's super important. Just like knock this out, get everything installed. If you don't have tracking, install it, and then later on, if you have a question, I can sit down with you and I can actually dig into the analytics and into this data with you, and I can show you how much more power and how empowering it is to have this data. All right. Okay, I think that's it then. No more questions. Thank you guys all so much for coming today. I'm gonna give you back 8 minutes of your time. Stick around. I'm hoping that we can get James on maybe next week. And I apologize. This was a very rough webinar. Just didn't have that much time to prepare. And I hope it was useful. I apologize if we had some technical issues. And I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.